Hello all, welcome to A Face from the Crowd. Our guest today is from the field of journalism. This young, warm, timid, and humble personality is from the city of Chennai. He did his graduation in Chennai in the field of journalism. He later did his master's from the best university of the world, the London School of Economics and Political Sciences, after which he is now working with a leading communication consultancy firm in London. He also contributes articles to the finance publishing platform called The Capital. At an age when many of his peers are still trying to discover themselves, this young gentleman has carved a niche for himself and has a profile that he can proudly boast of. A very warm welcome to our guest today, Amrit Shankar. Hello, Amrit Shankar. A very warm welcome to A Face from the Crowd. We are very glad to have you here on the show. By the way, how is it in London now? And how
Thank you
is
so
it?
much. So I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, so today it's about 15 degrees in London. It's about 8 p.m., 8 a.m. So yeah, early start. I'm very happy to be here first thing in the morning.
Wonderful. I'm glad you're happy. So, Amrit, tell us a little about yourself. Of course, I've given a short introduction, a brief introduction about you, but we would get it from the horse's mouth.
Oh, hello. Okay, again. Well, my name is Amrith, as you already know, and I work in public relations in London. So I've come here about 5 years ago, just after finishing my master's at the LSE, London School of Economics. I started working at a public relations firm. It's to do with interacting with clients and the media to get them coverage. So this could be for a client on BBC or a newspaper or anywhere. So we operate across the world. So ours is a very good company, and so yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Wonderful. A little about your family, Amrit. Where do you come from, and where was your schooling? What kind of a schooling did you have here back in India?
Okay. So well, my parents live in India, in Chennai. So my mom works in the railways, and my dad is retired now. He's taken voluntary retirement. So I have a brother who lives in Delhi and works in Delhi, so in the IT sector. So he's fine. Yeah, so I grew up in Chennai all through my life for about 20 years, 21 years. So I went to a very good school. My parents were very kind to put me through to a good school. And I had a brilliant childhood that way because the experiences that shaped me helped me to be where I am today. So I was really not that a keen student at school. The only subjects that really interested me were English, the social sciences, history a bit, and yeah, so and physics. But the rest was an uphill task, a Herculean task. But I came out of school. I went into. Do you want me to continue about my college education as well? Okay.
Um,
So just after I finished school, I didn't go into engineering. My mom really wanted me to actually apply for engineering. She, in fact, enrolled me to IIT coaching classes as well in India. So
that's the
I remember the
general
summers
trend.
there. Um, yeah, that's the trend. So, so I mean, that's the horse with blinkers. I think that many people have. I think my mom had it too, but at least she was willing to take it off of me, and I think I really appreciate that. So I had the flexibility to do whatever I wanted to do, and I realized I couldn't, for the love of God, work on engineering if I didn't have the mental capacity to actually sit and do it. So I realized my interests were elsewhere. So I did journalism, and just out of school, people are not really sure about alternate careers apart from engineering or say commerce or medicine,
Exactly.
including my mum. So my mum, I remember she had conversations with some of my cousin's friends who were in journalism to find out how the field is, and I connected with them as well. So to understand what life entailed as a journalist or in the field. So I was very thankful to speak with all those people in the industry. I think that was very useful. That gave me an understanding of what awaits me. So, and I went to the Madras Christian College in Chennai. So that's actually where my dad studied too. So, it was a good experience overall. It was a 3-year course and pretty laid back. And MCC is a very good campus. I think it's about 500 to 1,000 acres. I don't remember between the two. And we had a lot of flora and fauna around. I mean, actual forests in the MCC with deers going around and wild animals. So it was pretty cool. So I had the time of my life there. Yeah, wild animals, as in low category, not the higher carnivorous wild, but still pretty wild. So it was actually you could see boars, wild boars, snakes, deer, like I said, foxes. So a lot of animals around, and even sometimes elephants, I think.
That sounds interesting. Okay, you were saying that your mother was keen about you pursuing engineering,
Yeah.
Amrit. Now, what did it take you to, stand by what you thought you wanted to do? Because I'm sure, especially in India, it is very difficult to convince your parents when you take a different stand, especially, when they want you to pursue an engineering or a medicine. That's the whole crux of this show, what does it take to actually stick to your ground and, convince your parents? How did you do that?
I think the experiences that shaped me as a child and as an young adult, I think that's really what prepared me for what I wanted to do. It might sound silly, but growing up watching pop culture or TV from America or from Britain for that aspect, reading a lot of books, and you see how life is outside your bubble that you are in, and you realize things are out there that you can do if you're passionate about. And you have some amazing stories from everywhere around the world, not just from the West, even from the East. You read books like Murakami, and then you understand, life is awesome out there. You have so many creative fields, you have so many talented people doing so many different things. So, and I grew up like that. So I had a great experience watching, international television, international podcasts. I mean, I didn't listen to podcasts maybe not then, but now I do. But back then, I think I had books and TV mostly to influence my pop culture life. So that really prepared me to understand there's life beyond engineering. And I really hated the fact that you had to go to school and toil for the same subject like everybody, and I really felt being part of that whole mechanical system. So I didn't really gel with that. And one of my cousins, Nivedita, I had all these conversations with her, and I had other cousins as well who were in varied fields. So naturally, I put all these arguments to my mum, and she obviously listened to it, and she also appreciated the fact that I wanted to do something different. And but the only thing she was concerned about maybe was my career. So if the field of arts or outside of engineering, if it could actually make as much money as engineering or medicine, I think she was really concerned. Now, obviously, because you'd have to have a decent pay. So, and like I said, when she spoke to a couple of my cousins' friends as well who were in the field, and they realized, and then realized that it actually pays pretty decently, I think she was okay with the idea. Another thing that I kept hearing about was also, to finish engineering first and then get into journalism if you want.
Yes,
so people gave me that idea.
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I mean, understandably, I know where they come from with this idea. Just to ensure that there's a fallback option.
Backup, actually, yeah, that you have a backup option. If you don't fare well in your journalism, you can always fall back to your engineering, which is a more promising career according to many.
Yeah.
Fine.
So, but
Okay,
I
now,
realized it was four.
yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, okay. I realized it was 4 plus 3 years. I couldn't do that. I couldn't spend 7 years studying.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Actually, being able to know your potential is, I think, the best part of it, because many get into that groove actually, either because of parental pressure or societal pressure. People do take up engineering, and then somehow I think. Ultimately, they're not able to cope up with the entire thing. They realize it much later that this is not actually what they wanted to do at all, and that's a very dangerous situation. It is good that you could visualize at that very moment, at the crucial time, that this was not your cup of tea and you could choose your way. That was the right time, I guess, in fact.
Okay, I might sound anecdotal here, but there are two aspects. So one, engineering, I think, is overdone in our country, in India. I think people are really pushed. So there is a rat race. I feel there's a rat race with engineering, but I don't disagree with the fact that engineering is actually very important, because whatever we do around this world, the technology that we use or the infrastructure that we've built around us, I think it comes from really smart people who are in this field. So, I mean, if you look at the IITs, people there are amazing. And you have other institutions, high level institutions in India,
Yes.
which are really good for engineering. So if you're really passionate about it, go ahead, and I think you should do that. And there are very fields in engineering, and it's not just IT.
Exactly.
You have aeronautics, you have a mechanical, you have So I actually know a classmate of mine. I lost touch with him recently, but he was always passionate about cars when I was a student. So he always used to talk about BMWs and Lamborghinis. But I always had that as noise in the class. Where you can hear him talk about cars. But I was really surprised to know very recently that he's actually gone to automobile engineering design, and he studied for 4 years, in India. And one of my other friends was telling me for the past couple of weeks ago when I spoke that even during summer breaks in India, he was building go-karts and whatnot. So he was actually very passionate. And then now he moved to the Netherlands or something. So, and he studied automobile. I think he did the master's there, and he's working there. So people are really passionate about certain areas, and I think they should go with what they like or what interests them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Doesn't mean just because I always say that probably in every show, and that's what I had told in my introductory video as well. But I always say that people shouldn't get into that engineering and medicine out of a pressure. If you're passionate about it, then you work wonders, whichever field you take up. So it's all about being passionate about whatever you're doing at the end of the day. Very well said. Okay, now tell us a bit about your college days, Amrit. Now that you have had your entire, I would say, a major portion of your education back in India, you must have understood what is the kind of education that we have in India versus the kind of education you have had at LSE, the London School of Economics. And what is the striking difference you have observed?
I think moving from India to here, I actually had a gap for a year in India. I was working for a while. So I was out of education, and the job was actually, everyday things you learn on the job. So there's nothing that, you need to have predefined. But coming back into education again, I realized here in London, in the UK, or even, in fact, the rest of Europe, there's a lot of emphasis on self-learning and self-understanding. You do a lot of homework. So in India, I found it the other way around. So you go to college or school, and you have 10 hours straight of lectures and teachings. You go back home, you probably have homework which is on the subject that you've learned, and then you submit it the next day, or so on and so on. But here, you are expected to read 10, 20 different, research papers or books or texts, and then come to the lecture. You have a lecture which talks about whatever you've read already. So, you have a deeper understanding. So even if you have any questions, you probably understand it from the lecture. Once you finish your lecture, you get back to a small classroom of 20 people or 15 people. So it's broken down into different research batches. And then you have a discussion with your guide, or your professor. So it really breaks down education into your responsibility, into your sphere. So you have to make all the effort and understand everything and learn. I think that was quite a change for me. So initially, to set into the system was quite different. Obviously, for the very first lecture, I never read anything. I just went directly to university.
Because you were used to the Indian type of education, probably.
So yeah.
Even in India, the higher universities, the higher education, the colleges do follow this. Some of them, at least, the universities like the IIMs, especially, they have the same culture. They have the pre-read system. The students have to actually initially read and then go to the class, and then they have a discussion and then debates and group discussions, as you said. So they analyze things at a minute level, the way you said. Okay, Amrit, now when exactly did you decide that you need to go abroad for a higher education? And how did your parents actually react to that?
So I always wanted to get out of India, so to explore the world, to study outside. And I used to be really fascinated with the US, only because, as I said, I grew up with a lot of TV shows from the US, so I really wanted to travel, and I wanted to study there. And then I saw my options for universities around, and I realized the US was going to be very expensive for a program, and I didn't want to take a massive student loan. And I realized I was not really keen on London, but then once you live in the city, you start loving it. I applied for a bunch of universities. LSE was my prime choice, and I didn't think I would get into the LSE. So until I got the offer letter, I wasn't sure. And once I did, I immediately booked my ticket. I didn't even wait for a visa. So.
Okay. LSE, can you please explain to us the journey, Amrit? Because I think there will be a lot of our audience, or a lot of students out there who would like to take up maybe some higher level education at a different country, and they may not exactly know the journey. I'm sure many of them wouldn't know the journey, how to apply, where to look for any scholarships, if at all. What is the whole process? How did you go about everything? Were you spoon fed, or did you actually explore it yourself?
Yeah, so I think all the resources are available online. That's where I started. So the first thing I would probably suggest is to understand which course that you want to do. There are a lot of courses across different fields. So, and then there are a few ranking portals for universities. So there's QS, for example, which I use, QS World Ranking. And then you select the top 10 universities for that across the world, or maybe in the country that you're going to, because that's very important. So if you go to a very good university, you'll have a very high standard of learning and high standard of testing. So once you come out of a good university, I think that's a very big brand name that you can have on your resume. So I started by shortlisting the top 5 to 10 universities that I wanted to aim for. And then I applied for the top 5. So each of these universities would have their own internal requirements, but they're fairly broad. For example, a set of universities would want about 7.5 in your IELTS exam, your English exam, language exam. And then there is TOEFL as well, which is another alternate exam that you can probably take for English. And then there is also a set of parameters for the coursework that you want to aim for. So probably about 75% a merit plus or even a distinction. So I think if you're in this bracket, you can aim for the top tier universities. Universities also recognize that your marks can vary always based on circumstances, not under your control. So you can, if you demonstrate a varied experience in your CV and a strong statement of purpose, and as to why you would want to study that particular course at that particular university. If you write that in your statement of purpose, I think that'll be a good explanatory factor for the university to understand why you want to study there. And they would also want to know what you want to do after university. For example, in my statement of purpose that I applied with, I think I probably wrote 5 years from now this. I want to work in the industry, or I want to in the sector. So I demonstrated what I wanted to do after this degree, after getting the LSE's degree, and how that would help me. So these are references from your past university professors, or from the place of your work. So as I said, apart from the statement of purpose that you need and a few of the English language requirements, you would also need to submit certain gradings, exam gradings, GRE for engineering or GMAT for management courses that you want to do. That's pretty straightforward from them. So once you make up your mind as to what you want to do and where you want to do, each of the universities will have their own requirements. So the important bit is actually preparing yourself mentally to understand what you want to do. Finally, I think I would probably say this would be a year-long process because it can't be done immediately. All the deadlines for universities would be 6 months before the course starts, 7 months before the course starts. That's the deadline for application. And you want to be right ahead just so you can apply for a scholarship as well. So the LSE actually does a very good grant. It doesn't do scholarships much because anybody who gets into the LSE is good enough. So they have something called Graduate Support Scheme, GSS, I think. So you can actually mention how much your course costs versus how much you have. So you break down whatever money that you have already raised. And if, for example, if your course costs about £21,000 and you have about 17,500 in your kitty with both a student loan, your savings, and a grant from elsewhere. So whatever money that you have balance, the LSE covers it. So it's a good system that's in place. And there are other multiple scholarships as well, private institutions, public institutions that do grant scholarships. Even in India, to study abroad, for example, Tata does that. The Commonwealth Trust does that. So there are many institutions you can go to.
Now, since you said about journalism, you need to know what exactly you wanted to do. Now, for most of us, journalism means, something to do with reporting, something to do with probably a bit of writing and being there on the television or maybe behind the print media, whatever it is, a lot of creative work. Is that all about journalism, or what else is there to journalism? What can people expect to study or to know once you take up journalism?
There are various fields in journalism. You have photojournalism, you have video journalism, or you have writing, for a newspaper or publication. I would still rate writing as very important because whatever reportage that you do, it's really important that you back up with your own narrative for the story. Mm-hmm. So a flair for writing is very important, but that shouldn't stop you because you might
any language that you can write on.
So language skills are really important for journalism, and once you get in, I think you'll find an area of interest, and you can actually even get into journalism even without a background in journalism. So if you see a lot of financial journalists, they come from a background in finance. So they would have studied finance or corporate finance or wealth or business management, anything that you study, and then you can apply that in journalism if you have the necessary writing skills. But the reason you would want to do journalism as a course, as a standalone course, is to understand everything from scratch. So if you move in from another field, you wouldn't know the nuances of, of media, of publications, of even the industry, how it works. I think
Ground up. So that's the advantage of it. And yeah, and even if you're interested in in entertainment or in films or in TV, you can always get into journalism. So you can write about it. So anything that you're passionate about, anything that you are really interested in, horse racing, you can just be a horse racing correspondent, covering that. So people are there who do very niche aspects within journalism.
I said if a person has to write or publish his articles in a finance, platform, does he or she have to be a finance expert plus a journalist, or how does it work? Is it okay if you're just a finance expert and then you write out of your own capability?
I think if you're writing about a subject, any subject for that matter, including finance, you need to understand it. You need to understand what it is. So it's very important. If you're getting into this field of finance, it's very very much needed that you understand the sector. So a background would definitely help, or else you can always pick up as well. And if you read about it and you follow the markets, you follow other reportage, you'll understand how people write about it, and that's why you gather the necessary understanding of the markets. That's the case with any other area of journalism as well. So unless you know a bit about the subject, you won't be able to ask questions about it. You won't be able to cover it in depth. You won't be able to critique it. So as I said, so if you're covering, for example, the RBI's interest rate decisions, the RBI would probably announce a reduction on rates, but they won't give you a background on why they are reducing beyond a certain factor, because you are expected to know interest rates are being reduced because they want to prop up the economy, they want to increase consumer spending, or to increase borrowing. So that's why they do all these. So you need to have an understanding about how the markets work, or how the institutions within the space works. And I think most of the people who get into certain sectors within journalism, they do it by experience. They have years and years of experience. So they would start off a senior journalist, helping them with research, helping them with background casework, helping them with interview soundbites, or even actually handling a camera. So once you tag along with people, and then you go around seeing how a senior journalist or how an established journalist works, you'd have a fair idea of the industry.
True.
And I think internships are really valuable there. So even if you're studying a course, I think it's necessary to supplement it with on-ground training.
Well said. Okay, now we also get to know that people who know you very well feel that you are actually married to your profession. So how do you love your job, and what kind of how are you able to actually give that kind of a commitment to your work? Is it the passion that you have for it, or what is it?
I think that's pretty much it, because if you're interested in the field, that's where you would be. That's where you need to be, and that's what makes you get out of bed at 6:30 a.m. every day to get ready and go to work. So if you're interested, I think it's all interest. I mean, that's what drives you, motivates you. That's what pays your bills. Your interests actually pay your bills. Even if they don't, I think you need to still put in the hard work and see where you want to move, or where you want to go from there. So you always chart out your path forward.
So what are your other hobbies, Amrit, apart from your work? Are there anything else that actually interests you?
So I read a lot, I think. So I used to read fiction, and Harry Potter was a big thing when I was a child. But now I read a lot of politics, or a lot of non-fiction books, autobiographies. And I also run. I volunteer. I used to volunteer, at least before COVID, at my running club behind the bar, and I blog. I follow the financial markets, so I blog about the financial markets. So that's pretty much my interest.
Okay, no worries. We also heard that you were a big fan of cricket in your younger days when you were at school. Yeah, and you wanted to be a cricketer at one point of time. How did that change? I also know that you got clicked with Sachin Tendulkar once.
Yeah. So I think I was a big fan of Sachin when I was growing up. I think like other billion other people in India. So cricket was a big thing, and still is. I think is a good sport for me to I follow. Uh,
Do you still follow cricket?
I do, but I follow F1 more now, or tennis. Cricket as well. I still keep an eye out. I do follow. Yeah.
That's nice. Now, any message that you would like to give to the youngsters now? So, what would be your message to all of them? Because you come from a very humble background, and you have shaped up your life in such a way that now, I think when you look back, not only you but others also feel proud of you. So, what's the kind of message that you would like to give?
I think I'm not in a position to dish out advice, but I think the best thing I can probably say is for people to to understand. I think a lot of people don't understand that you can actually reach out to people or other members of the society or other members in the field to collaborate or to discuss your ideas or to have a mentor. I think that's really important to have. So anything that you are doing and you're doubtful, you can always you can always reach out to a pool of talent out there, established people. There are many platforms like LinkedIn or Twitter that you can actually go. So for example, even if you're looking into a course or if you're looking into a new job, you have plenty of other people who've pretty much done the same thing. So for example, even if you're applying for a university degree, you can always go and filter, LSE's past students or alumni, and you can message them. You can network with them. I think that's really, really important. Networking is the key to actually to move forward, because otherwise you'll be really in your own thoughts and your own ideas. So reach out to other people. I think that's the only thing that I can tell anybody who's watching this.
Did you also do that? Did you also message to people who are the alumni of LSE? Did you try to find out what?
I did. So I did. LinkedIn has a very good feature where you can actually filter based on alumni and the year and the course and see who comes up, and you can actually see their profiles. So and then you can actually reach out to them and ask them for seek advice or even just connect with them. So that way you'll have a broad contact base, and you'll also have a lot of ideas and thoughts come your way instead of your own.
Very well said. You were also talking about mentors. So did you also have a mentor in your life? If so, maybe know who it was, or is it also confidential?
It's not confidential. I mean, her name was Mahati. She was my very first boss.
Okay.
She has been my mentor. She had been my mentor. So she shaped me for who I am today. She really pushed me to apply for the LSE. She motivated me. She was right there rooting for me every time. And I could approach her with any problems or any setbacks or even any happy news. I mean, she always was there to listen to me and give me ideas. So,
did you ever tell her what you thought about her?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think so.
Okay. If you didn't, I think you should share this video, this episode with her so that she comes to know what you think about her. Okay. Wonderful, Amrit. Thanks a lot for being on the show. It was great having you, and I'm sure you're being inspiring many others now, because we are at a stage where people are very low at this moment, as it is, how the situation around is, and to add to that, the kind of pressure that people have at the moment, both with respect to their academics and their finances. Things can be difficult for many people, and at this time, I think your interview would definitely help them to do better. I hope so, at least. Thank you for being on the show.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me on.